The invitation reads, free the 16 electors poolside party. Snacks provided. Please bring drinks to share. Proceeds will be used to support the legal defense funds for the 16 Michigan electors fighting the politicized attacks from the evil AG Dana Nessel. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel indicted those 16 Michiganders last month on felony charges for their roles in designating themselves duly elected and qualified electors for president in 2020, when they most certainly were not. They will appear in court next week. But before that, pool party, to which one might imagine Attorney General Dana Nessel is not invited. Joining us now is Michigan's top law enforcement official, Attorney General Dana Nessel. Thank you so much for being here. I'm not going to even comment on the pool party, but I will ask you about the indictment that was just released, Jack Smith special counsel's indictment, in which Michigan is a major focus. I think Michigan appears 39 times in the indictment. And I'm sure you've read it. Given the work you're doing on fake electors and that plot, do you see overlap between what is in the indictment at the federal level and what you're doing at the state level?
Well, yes, absolutely, Alex. There's overlap. A lot of the information that was in the indictment was information, obviously, that was in the January 6th report, and that was already well known to us. There were a few things here and there, I think, that were sort of newly discovered pieces of evidence that we didn't know about. But for the most part, we were operating under the same set of facts as the special prosecutor was. And to answer your question, no, I was not invited to the pool party. But I will say this, in my many years of not just being a prosecutor, but also doing criminal defense work, one of the things that I generally advise my clients is don't call the prosecutor evil. It's not ever going to be favorable for you in your case. But, you know, that's what we've come to expect now. And that's just how criminal defendants talk about their cases. But you know, it's unfortunate for the entire country, I think, as all of this plays out.
Yeah, it's a hot legal pro tip not to call the prosecutor evil. Apparently, that's gone over their heads. Let me ask about the voting machine indictment that came out yesterday. It doesn't seem like it's coincidence that some of the people who have not been charged, but nonetheless we know to have been involved in the plot to seize voting machines and run forensic tests unlawfully on them, that those people were also involved in the plot to do the very same thing in the state of Georgia. Do you think this all goes back, including the Michigan efforts, do you think this all goes back to Trump and potentially Rudy Giuliani, who oversaw a lot of that election machine interference?
Yeah, well, clearly this was a coordinated effort that started at the very top, involved all of these same actors that we've been hearing about all the way throughout the course of these investigations. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that they had attorneys and many other individuals that were operating at the state levels as well. So, you know, this is all coordinated. It truly is the definition of a legal conspiracy. And I think that, you know, before the special prosecutor is done, whether it's federally, Jack Smith, or the special prosecutor who's working in Michigan, I think we're going to see a lot more indictments generated.
Yeah, I got to ask on that level, because we know at the state level, Fani Willis may be gearing up to indict Trump. And if, in fact, the Michigan plot does go all the way back to Trump, would it foreclose the possibility that the special counsel in your state might also indict Trump?
Well, I will say this, you know, I'm not going to foreclose any possibility, and I don't know what the special prosecutor here, DJ Hilson, has planned or doesn't have planned. I will say that, you know, one of the reasons why in the very beginning I initially referred our false slate of electors case to the federal government is because of jurisdictional related issues. And, you know, in Michigan, you know, I as Attorney General have statewide authority. I can charge in any county. I can execute search warrants in any county in the state of Michigan. But, you know, I'm limited. It's much more difficult when you're talking about reaching actors that operated outside of the state of Michigan. And that's true for most of the state AGs. So, that's why you really rely on the federal government to do their job, because, of course, their jurisdiction is the entire nation.
Yeah, I have to ask about this because at the state level, states have been pretty clear about the malfeasance that was occurring at the state level and sort of standing in deference to the feds to wait for that indictment. I sense that there has been some amount of frustration at the pace at which the feds have been working, and now we are running into the calendar for a campaign season. I mean, what do you make of the timeline with which the DOJ has operated in terms of issuing this indictment and completing, or at least the initial stage of its investigation?
Well, I will say this, that it's inescapable that the vast majority of the evidence that we've seen in the indictment, I think, was work that was frankly done by the January 6th Commission. And perhaps prior to the special prosecutor really getting involved in any parts of that, and then running with what the J6 committee had already done. So, for me here in Michigan, I think it was just very important that as we moved along, that there was a sense that when people had committed crimes, obvious, open crimes, many of which these individuals had openly bragged about, that there was some feeling of accountability, and that when you commit certain crimes that we as prosecutors regularly charge each and every day here in the state of Michigan, that you not be treated differently because your crimes were committed in behest of this scheme to have the person of your choosing reelected as president of the United States. You're not any less culpable of these crimes because you did it for that purpose. And that was one of the messages that I think needed to be sent. If you committed these crimes, you're just as guilty as anybody else who committed similar crimes. The only difference is these crimes would have resulted in the overturning of a lawful election in which 5.5 million people voted in my state.
I want to ask on that just really quick about that question of accountability. There is some sense that at the federal level, there are options for Trump to derail all of this should he become the nominee, should he become president again in 2024, and that once again, the onus may return to the states in terms of holding people to account. Is that something you think about as this all moves forward, that if all else fails on the federal level, it will be the states in the United States of America that hold Trump and his allies to account?
Alex, quite honestly, I mean, if we get to that point where we have a situation where Donald Trump becomes president again, irrespective of all of these many different indictments, and then puts a person like, for instance, a Jeffrey Clark, in as his attorney general, we're going to have a whole lot of problems, much worse to think about than whatever the accountability is or isn't for what occurred during the 2020 election. So, my hope is that people will be properly held accountable in these current prosecutions, and that is not going to be a concern for us.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. We will be following everything you're doing.
Thanks for having me.